Welcome to the Earthworks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon with many of the turf friends we've met over the past 35 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and this is another Earthworks podcast, and I'm very excited to have back, I think for the third time now, dude. And I think everybody knows you in the industry right now, but this is Mr. Tyler Bloom, and he has been around the industry for a number of years, and now has been doing Bloom. What is the actual title? Bloom?
Whatever you want to call it these
No,
days.
I don't. I want you to call it.
Yeah, it's Bloom Golf Partners. Yes, rebranded in early January.
Yeah, so last time you weren't Bloom Golf Partners. This is why you're throwing me off here, bud. But I have to say, and I said this to you before we got started, I've known you for a long time. I knew you when you were growing grass and some dog track in Maryland and a couple of other folks places that you were at. But I've watched you kind of get into this whole executive search and business service consulting business, and I have to say I compliment you and commend you, and I think you've done a phenomenal job. I love what you're doing. I mean, I love the fact that you've gone beyond, and we're going to talk a lot about this because you got a lot of stuff. I mean, we could probably talk for 3 hours here, but I love the fact that you're going way beyond just the executive search piece of the business and getting into this business services thing. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about your project with my dear friend Pat Jones and the packet you put out on workforce trends and assistance. But one of the things I just asked you're partnering with this group called the Center for Generational Kinetics, which is interesting because kinetics basically means the rates of reaction. So when I read that, I'm like, that's actually an interesting title. Tell us about this. What's going on? Tell us about what you're doing. I'm going to shut up now, which is hard for me, and let you have the floor and talk.
Yeah, well, I appreciate our friendship and your support for the last few years. We've had a number of conversations over the years, so I really genuinely appreciate it. But well, I'll kind of date back to some conversations that I was having maybe a little over a year ago. I would do these consulting projects, and superintendents or club officials would call me seeking advice regarding whether it's assistant search, equipment managers, could be across the club industry around just getting people into the business. I started thinking to myself, like, it's one thing to be able to go and do a search project and collect data from our existing work, right? There's value to that. But then I kind of thought to myself, I need to get some data. I'm a pretty objective guy. Like a lot of times don't make decisions unless I have some data, probably to a fault. But I just kind of thought we need to do some research around what is driving people to come into the industry, what would keep them in it, and just kind of get a real understanding of this, because I felt like, no disrespect to anybody else in the industry, I just didn't feel like that information existed.
Yeah, I don't think it did.
So I was at an entrepreneurs meeting back in July 2024, and this gentleman by the name of Jason Dorsey was giving a presentation on a book he wrote called, The Z Economy. It was all about Gen Z and how that's going to shape business, economics, things of that nature. And I just went up and talked to him and learned a little bit about what his company does, which is national research for companies, employers of all different backgrounds, really on generational shifts and how that's going to impact their businesses. Could be in real estate, hospitality, IT, manufacturing, whatever it is, but that's what they do. And so I kind of vetted out what their process was, right? Because a lot of times you see these studies and it's like, well, what's the pool? Are they getting a real representative data and people from all over the country? And so what we targeted was people ages 18 to 65, really across the country, Southeast, Northeast. It was pretty balanced. You had a quarter of people, and it was about 1,000 individuals that participated. So you had a quarter from the Northeast, Southeast, West, Northwest, right, and Midwest as well.
Yeah,
you see it at a pretty.
That's 5 quarters, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I didn't win any awards in math, so
yeah, that's all right. It's as many quarters as you can throw in the pot.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, exactly. So
sorry.
There's gonna be a lot of this self-deprecating conversation today.
That's all right, bud. It's all in love, that.
Yeah. So, anyways, we set out and kind of looked at 3 categories. recruiting. What will it take to get people into the industry?
Yeah.
What will keep them? And then what are the things employers need to do to build a good workplace culture, not just for retention, but really holistically, just to be a better employer? It was fascinating. I mean, it took about 60 days for them to collect this data. I was pretty blown away that they could get that information that quick.
Yeah, really.
And the interesting thing too, Joel, was like they looked at people that from like an economic scale where your line level staff may be making $20 to $25 an hour, all the way up to your CEO, of representative data, people making three, four, $500,000 more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a really interesting group of people that they looked at. And, once we got the information, I kind of was blown away and said, man, where do we start? Because it feels like I've got like 3-4 years worth of information here to really.
You got a bucket full of stuff you don't know what to do with.
Yeah. So ultimately, what we did is we packaged it into kind of what I thought were some of the main key takeaways in each of those sections. And then kind of from now, like moving forward, we'll dial back into like one specific category with them and try to expand on that research. And for me, what it's done is actually given me hardcore data to go give advice to a club that's grounded in research science versus just anecdotal things that, I may pick up.
Yeah, I can imagine this has been very helpful to what you're doing.
Yeah. And to go from there, I mean, there's so much impact that I have found from that in the conversations thereafter, after people have read it.
Yeah.
And some of the things are really simple. It's not, rocket science, solutions. It's actually pretty easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have to agree with that, and there wasn't huge surprises, but the patterns were pretty interesting. I mean, one of the things that I guess, and certainly in the specifics of the assistance thing, education was pretty interesting. They all thought 2-year degrees were pretty important, but 71% didn't think a 4-year degree was important at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Has that changed, do you think, in the last 20 years? My generation, the boomers, probably wouldn't have agreed with that.
Yeah. I think it has changed, and we're seeing it in the search process where people are looking at untraditional backgrounds or certificate programs,
Yeah.
basic education. I certainly feel that 2-year associate's degree is pretty important when you get a superintendent's job or a director's role. But man, I can tell you there's been a couple instances where we haven't had people that landed superintendent jobs that have that, bare minimum education. So I think that that's a good thing, at least for right now, to just get people back interested in it, because education's been a barrier because people can't afford it.
Yeah, exactly. It's been crazy. Let me go backwards a little, Tyler, because I really want to get into the work you're doing specifically with the generations. I mean, it looks like working with the Center for Generational Kinetics, you really dived into, who the millennials are, who the Gen Zs are, what the differences are. I mean, the boomers, obviously, what's between us, Gen X. I mean, you got 4 generations actively working in the industry right now. One of the graphs I saw, you kind of broke out, where the different generations are, and it's fairly evenly spread, isn't it? I mean, the boomers surprised me that I think you said there was 21% of us boomers still in the industry, which actually kind of surprises me because we're all starting to fade away. But what was the most revealing when you started really going down that road, and how do you talk to clubs about the different generations and how to manage them? I mean, as a business owner, I'm dealing with the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs and the millennials. I mean, it's pretty interesting seeing how you have to manage differently. But what have you learned? I mean, give us some insight from all this work that you've done on the various generations.
Yeah, well, for me, it's funny. You think about boomers in general, and we're seeing that superintendents are staying in the jobs longer than they previously have. Maybe they're kicking the can in retirement a little bit down the road further. But I think for any older generation, they want to be a mentor.
Yeah.
They want to be able to impart their knowledge and coach and train to a degree.
Yeah.
To a degree, they don't probably want 20, 30 people reporting to them, but they want to be able to impart their knowledge and technical skills that they develop down to the next generation. They're probably not going to be, super interested in a lot of the, let's call it, new team building activities that are out there,
Right. Right.
for the
We're
most
too
part.
old.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
just too tired and old, and we don't want to. Let me ask you, I mean, I remember 10 years ago, and I'm sure you remember these days, but all of us in the industry at this age, when the superintendent hit 50, it looked like the bullseye was on their back and it just kept growing and growing. That doesn't seem to be as prevalent. Is that a fair statement, or am I just wishful thinking?
I think you're onto it. And from my perspective, I think clubs are realizing, all due respect to the millennials, which I'm one, and Gen Z, is like the work ethic isn't really there. And so they're realizing that knowledge and experience that they have from some of their older tenured superintendents, probably not as easy just to kick them out, and think you're going to get this up and comer that's ready to go. So I
Yeah.
think people are recognizing that, hey, there's still a lot of good that we can get. And maybe some of the innovation that we can culture that a little bit, but I see my perspective on this, and I've had a lot of discussions with different superintendents. Is you look at let's call it the mid tier to bottom tier level clubs, they're not going to have access typically to experienced superintendents because they can't pay.
Right.
They can't afford it.
Yeah.
And I think what you're going to see, and I think we're already seeing it, is more of regional superintendents, or you're going to see more management company setups because
Well, and we definitely are, right? I mean, you're definitely seeing management companies, you're seeing guys going around that are managing 3 or 4 properties
yeah,
and then have, either a titled superintendent or, a strong assistant running the show at each property.
yeah, and they can't afford to pay an assistant even
Yeah.
80, 90, $100,000,
Right,
which
right.
now become pretty much the commonplace for senior level assistants.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see more of sort of this management company style, leadership or superintendents. And you see it even with the GMs. This is not new to this industry.
Right, right.
There are a lot of models where you have general managers that might be on an interim basis. They may consult, and they're training somebody there that's on at the facility and trying to train them up a little bit. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see more of that.
So let me stay with the boomers. I talk to obviously a lot of my peers that I've worked with for 30 some years, 60s. But it certainly feels like they're actually saying, yeah, I'm going to stay here until I retire. And I don't remember that 10, 20, 15 years ago even. But are they actually, is the role radically changing for the 55 to 65-year-old? Are they truly becoming more of a, mentor and a facilitator more so than are there a lot of hands-on 63-year-olds anymore?
Crazy enough, I have seen them.
They're definitely out there.
I
Yeah,
know.
the crazy people who,
I know.
yeah,
That's what got these guys in the business, is working in the dirt, and working with their hands. So some of them have a hard time.
it's soil, by the way. Yeah, but yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Apologize.
Forget who you're talking to here.
I've been removed from day to day for a few years.
I hear you. I hear you. It's all good. It's all
But but I,
good.
but I think that in general that they've gotten into this role because they love working with their hands
Yeah,
and have a hard time delegating that out. But I think as time moves on, like, I'm no different. Like, I'm not as agile and flexible as I used
exactly.
to be.
Yeah,
So you have to learn how to manage
yeah.
differently
I
and
can
and
barely
delegate.
get out of a chair in the morning, for God's sake.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I see that role has really changed that dramatically in the context of boomers. What I have seen is in the context of the superintendent role really elevating to, I hear this more and more about director of agronomy, meaning
Right.
they
Great
don't want
title. Yeah.
they don't want to see, clubs don't necessarily want to see their superintendent as hands-on and in the weeds, because they're getting pulled into board meetings, strategic planning. You look at all the renovation project work that's
Yeah.
happening throughout the country, and that person in that role has really elevated into like sort of strategic thought partner at their club. And so I see probably more of that than maybe generational specific, the role changing.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense if you think about it. I mean, you bring years of experience. You got, hopefully you're mentoring the next generation at the club, and it really works on. Let me go down the roll. I'm curious from your perspective, Gen X guys in the industry, which is now and I'm going to do this badly, but late 30s to mid to early 50s is something. Or I guess I tapped into some of the millennials, but the Gen X is right behind the boomers. They're a little closer to the boomers than probably the Gen Zs are, right?
Yeah.
What's the uniqueness of the Gen X generation?
I think of many of my friends because and the people I worked with because they sit in that. So they're I'm gonna laugh and say they're a mix of old school with a
Right.
little with a
They're
little bit of
confused. I think they're
yeah,
just confused.
I like that.
There's no identity. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm just no
yeah.
criticism here.
So this level of person came up in the era of you work hard and you work hard and you put a lot of time and effort into the
Yeah,
job.
yeah,
There's no conversation around work-life balance. It's the job is what the job is, right? I think that generation now has maybe learned from the boomers that hey, maybe we can do things slightly differently, delegate a little bit more, try to give people a little bit more time off, in general and how they manage their people. I think Gen X probably looks for things like autonomy,
yeah,
trust.
yeah,
That's important to them in
yeah.
terms of
That's
what
good.
I think that's something that stands out. I think that I find this often is most superintendents that we work with in that area and that age demographic, they're looking for a little bit of independence.
Yeah,
They want to be able to have some impact on their facility and not be micromanaged. But they also appreciate directness. One
right.
thing I have found very interesting, and I know that's a generalization, but I think what I have found is that most problems at that level are communication. And a lot of it's just because people won't be direct.
Now, is that across the country, or do you think that's just us in the Northeast that just you're too blunt and just boom?
Oh,
I mean, are you seeing that in the Midwest? I mean, they're too nice to be blunt, aren't they?
I don't know, man.
Is it work? It's a management style that's
Yeah,
becoming. You said something interesting. The Gen Xers, and I think in our industry of the Gen Xers is the guys that they push the 120-hour work week, and it's just work, 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 work. Are they actually going to the boomers and starting to change, or are they actually hearing? The millennials and the Gen Zers saying, "Yeah, we don't want to do that." I mean, where is the change coming from? Is it coming from the bottom, or are they actually getting mentored top down?
well, I think the bottom's forcing them to change because
Yeah,
they have
yeah.
a choice.
I guess that's kind of where I'm going, right?
Yeah, they're not going to have a choice, or they're just not going to have people, right?
Yeah.
To their dismay, too. Man, I can't tell you how many therapist conversations I have to have with
Oh, I bet.
superintendents about millennials and Gen Z, but they kind of have no choice.
Yeah.
The smart ones are adapting, right? They're not they're not compromising their standards, though. I will tell you that
Good.
they're not
Perfect.
compromising their standards. What they're doing is trying to adapt and get people bought in and have them take ownership of those standards and be a part of the solution, which I think is a lot different than just being given direct orders and you follow the orders and
Right.
there is no questions on why, you just do it. So I think just being able to adapt the communication style to this younger generation is important. And I'm sure, every generation can sit back and say, oh man, this next generation doesn't work as hard. They're not as smart. They
My
don't.
dad said it to me, and I'll say it to my son, and that's going to be the world as it is forever and forever. One of the things that I did see throughout the entire publication that kept impressing me, and I'll come back to this in more detail, but culture kept coming up, especially among the Zs and probably the millennials. But what you were just describing really is culture, and it sounds like culture has really taken on, whereas before it was my way or the highway. But now it certainly feels as I travel around, and I certainly don't get around as much as I once did, but as I travel around, I certainly see everybody using that phrase and building that culture. I mean, and it's always refreshing. I mean, to see clubs where you see the crew that's been there for 35 years. I highlight a dear friend, John Chassard at Lehigh Country Club, who you know well. John's got a staff that's been there forever, and they have to work with John, for God's sake. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's something going on there. I say that with, again, great affection, John. But the culture thing is rampant through your, which is good, through your your package there, and that obviously came from conversations that you were having. So it's there.
Yeah. Well, you just hit on a person who's adapted very well generation to generation. And you
Yeah,
and you see
yeah.
what John's just done with bringing Jimmy Lanza in and a couple other guys, and that wasn't something that John was probably expecting to have to do,
Mm.
but talk about adapting and they're going to continue to do well. And that's because of John, like
Yeah,
his personal reputation.
and from day one, he really built a culture. I mean, and he was way ahead of his time from that standpoint because, you see some clubs, where they've got a crew around. And that's another trend I think that you're seeing is the team staying around and assistants staying on. I think I saw in your thing, 13% of assistants want to stay assistants. Which is interesting. I actually I thought it might have been a little higher based on what I'm seeing out in the industry. Assistants I see, especially since the pay for assistants has gotten a lot better. It seems like assistants are more willing to stay in that role, not have to take on the headache of the big cheese, and be happy with that. I mean, is that a trend as well?
I think smart clubs are looking at it that way that,
Smart
realistic.
smart superintendents.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
what's the point of trying to retrain people every 2 to 3 years, and you're making it harder for yourself? And I
yeah,
think clubs are seeing that. There's kind of two tracks: the track of like move them on up and move them out. Which, listen, there's probably realistically in every major metro market 2 or 3 clubs that have that pathway for somebody. Most
right.
clubs need to figure out how can we create a sustainable career pathway and stability for somebody that they can earn a good living wage, not feel stressed out, to have to take on the whole load, but they're finding recognition, being rewarded, and there's growth opportunities, and they may have a better balance of life outside of work as well.
Yeah.
I think that's 95 or 99% of clubs should be looking that way. It's much more sustainable.
Yeah, the old way. I mean, everybody, certainly, my peers of the boomer generation, it seemed like you would bring an assistant, you'd want them to be there 2, 3 years, and you want them to move on and get another, get a job. And of course, back in the '90s, that was easy. It was jobs were out there, and guys were becoming supers quickly. There were a lot of opportunities. It doesn't seem like the opportunities are quite there, but it also seems like the culture has changed, and smart superintendents are realizing, hey, this guy's actually pretty good. If I keep him and keep him happy, everybody's life is a little bit better. Let me get back to we went through Gen X. Let's talk of the millennials, and then we'll keep feathering back to everything that was in here. But what's your what do you see in the millennial side of the world? I mean, it's a pretty unique generation, and they changed a lot of things, many of which I think for the better, and some of which frustrate the living daylights out of us old boomers. So I mean, it's an interesting generation.
Well, I'm a part of that generation that
Yes, you are.
frustrated
Yes, you are.
frustrated two generations, and I can look back and say, man, I feel really bad for some of the things I did because I
Yeah.
realized I created a lot of stress for others that was probably not
Well,
not
you were heavily influenced by the Gen X group. I mean, you were in a lot of places where you were doing the 120-hour work weeks, and that strong Gen X mentality. But now the millennials have, like you said earlier, really kind of pushed that a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's no doubt if you're living under a rock and you don't see work-life balance being a conversation and flexibility and the importance of that, you're going to get blown away
Yeah,
because
you're lost.
not only does that generation see that as important, but the one coming up,
Oh,
Gen.
maybe worse.
Well,
Yeah,
I think now you
or
got two.
better, depending on how
Yeah.
you look at it.
Now you've got the majority of the working force putting that pressure on. One comment that I'd like to always talk about and work-life balance conversation is, look, if you're going to be successful in anything, there's going to be periods of life where you got to pour more into
Yeah.
business, your professional than personal. And I see that now probably more so than I did when I was in the thick of things, right?
Mhm.
And when I think of kind of what we found in that study is workplace culture isn't defined just by flexibility, time off, things of that nature. It's important and it needs to be a conversation and you need to be mindful of it. But workplace culture also means that you have a mentor who's looking to develop, engage, provide real-time praise, growth opportunities, be able to show people that if you do X for a period of time, you're going to get to Y. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, people don't want to stay stagnant in a specific role. So I think that's a good thing in general. That people, millennials specifically, they want to see growth opportunity. So if they feel they're in a stuck job, most likely, and there's no pathway forward for them, at some point they're probably going to say it's time to look elsewhere. But I think that's probably common practice for just about anybody. I mean, that shouldn't just be, excuse me, stereotypical for one generation, but that was something that really kind of stood out to me, which I hate to say confirmed my own bias, but
Yeah.
it's really what I see when we think of workforce development and some of the apprenticeship programs we've built is that is built to basically show people here is a pathway to get additional skills and education. And when you do that, you're going to make more money or you're going to get an enhancement in your job title, responsibilities. It's a structured pathway so people see an end to their efforts.
How do you address with the older generations? I mean, I think a lot of older generation look at the millennials and say, these guys want to work a lot less, but they want to make a lot more money. I mean, that's a perception that I hear often of the boomers and even some of the Gen X's. I'm not sure I completely subscribe to that, but how do you mentor somebody that's looking to bring or manage a millennial group, and that's the perception that they have.
Tough one, but you've got to frame the conversation around outcomes,
Yeah,
values, and mutual benefit, right? And I often hear, well, they're different. That's always a conversation. They're different. Okay, no kidding. Well, we need to shift that mindset from they're different to they're valuable, and
yeah,
find exactly what they do bring to the table that you can put them in a specific role for them to be successful. Um, they're big into innovation. You look at all the technology that's out there.
yeah.
Millennials are going to be the best fit to help with autonomous mowers, with drone sprayers, with some of the software programs. I mean, just even something I think about often is, you guys do your academies, right? Well, that's something that's valuable to those millennials to be a part of that education and build their network. So if I'm a boomer, I'm reframing my mindset. Okay, can I sprinkle some of those things in
Yeah.
throughout the course of the year to keep them engaged while also being realistic of here's what I need from you day in, day out, but here's the carrot that I'm going to put out there for you to keep you engaged. I think those are some great practices. And, we're talking about some of our case studies or people who've done a great job of that. Our friend down at Congressional, Pete Went, is as good as anybody
He's as
that
good as anybody.
and he's as good because he gets the most out of his people and he gets a lot out of those guys, but Pete does as good a job as anybody of integrating his assistants into the day-to-day decisions and into the industry.
Yeah.
And that was apparent. I mean, geez, I spent 2 days down at the senior PGA a few months ago. I just missed you. I think I saw
Yeah,
you.
by hours, I think.
I think I actually
No,
saw you in the cart going to your car to
I
leave.
promise that's true. Yeah,
But
I did a hit and run, but I got to ride around with Pete for a bunch of hours, and it was beautiful. What a great place.
it was incredible. And
Yeah,
and again, it's going to sound like I'm totally kissing his butt, but
that's all right. You are.
yeah, I am. But that operation there, I don't want to say is on autopilot, but there's a sense of ownership from again the
Yeah.
staff to the AITs up the chain and the management team. It's because those individuals are engaged and
Well,
they're
Pete, he does a lot. I mean, personally, he brings me in, and I do a lot of agronomy training for all the assistants. So when there's a soil test battery that we do, it's often a conversation with that whole team. So there's leadership, there's training, there's mentoring. They're learning pieces of the puzzle. I mean, I'm one tiny little piece of this big pie, but he's done a great job. And needless to say, the guys that he's mentored that are now superintendents, they're absolutely some of the best in the industry. There's no question in my mind. I mean, they're great.
100%. They work smarter than harder, right?
They really do, and you're right about the technology with these millennials. I find that fascinating. I mean, I went into a shop the other day, and this guy's he's a classic millennial. I don't think there was a piece of technology that's new that he doesn't have. You know, the mowers, he's got the turf rad system. He's got a little bit of everything. One of the things I've heard, and you're going to probably need to get involved in this. I hear this from a lot of these guys, is that the next hire is probably going to be a technology manager, somebody that can manage all these technologies, the databases, the instruments, and make sure they're always running. It's a little bit different than the classic mechanic.
Yeah. Well, so let's turn that back to what we just previously were talking about, long-term assistance.
Yeah,
Create a role for them that makes it
there
long
you
term
go.
for them, right? So there's an example of adapting. And I think that's part of, that I don't know, that mindset that superintendents maybe of the older generation have to have a little bit is the position and the operation that you had 5-10 years ago isn't going to be the same because the employees that are coming in are looking for rapid advancement, and so you got to create opportunities for them, or they're just gonna look for
They're just
other,
going to keep popping. Yeah.
and that seems to be pretty normal for them, which is hard for somebody that's been in a position for 25, 30 years to say, man, this person's only here for a year, 2, 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I th-
mean, the boomers were, one job and done, or at least that's not true. But the great generation, my father's generation, now I'm aging myself, but, they were certainly one job and done. We were a little bit less of that, but now it's, that level of loyalty is gone. Let me ask you about, because I don't really, I mean, well, I do actually, because I have one at home, but the Gen Zs, the 18 to 25-year-olds, what's your take? I mean, that's going to be the next generation of folks coming into the industry, and what's their motivations?
um well, they're not lazy. They're not
No, they're really not, are they? I mean, I'm pretty impressed by that, to be honest with you.
I'm finding in my interactions with interns and some of that, the young up and comers in the high schools, they're highly skeptical of broken systems.
Yeah, well, gee, shocking. Yeah,
So they want a little bit of purpose. They want transparency. Obviously, autonomy is earned, not just given. But think about what they've been through in their life. Like, let's take a step back.
yeah,
They grew up in 9/11. They
yeah.
grew up in economic crashes, climate crisis, school shootings, COVID. So they're not necessarily just going to blindly trust an institution. They're
No.
going to want some level of like why we're doing things and how come. So they need a little bit more clarity around what's going on and why they're doing it.
And the
Uh,
millennials aren't quite like that, are they? They didn't go, live through quite the stuff that these guys have, these folks have gone through. I keep saying guys, but it's both men and women, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I have a 25-year-old at home, and he was born 2 years, later, 9/11 hits, and then, like you just said, I mean, describe their life growing up, and one of the things that really came through was a lot of bullying during those years. So, that generation is tough. But yeah, I've worked around a lot of them, and they do have a great work ethic. I mean, that's shocking to me. I mean, I
I
think
think
it's wonderful.
I think that's the good thing about what we're seeing in that generation is that their perspective of work life is that they expect work to fit in their life,
Yeah.
not we're going to have a separation of the two. And I think our mutual friend, Mr. Armin Sudi, spoke about that on his
Yes, he
podcast,
did. Yes,
right?
well spoken. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's funny as an owner of a company of pushing 40 years, that we're all people of my peer, now managing, a bunch of younger folks, millennials typically. The management team is always like, well, how are you letting this happen? I mean, you never let that happen before. It's like, because I don't have a choice, first of all. And these are the people that are going to be the next generation. And I want them to be very successful and carry on a legacy. Let's go through some of the stuff in your book. And the first thing, and the publication that you guys have out, and again, you brought Pat Jones in there from Stick, and Pat's been doing these kind of things for a while. I love the work you guys did together, the collaboration between the two of them. Of course, Pat's Pat. Pat's been on here a couple of times. I've known him for a long time. I consider him a dear friend. Oh, and by the way, both of you definitely had fake pictures in that publication. I mean, there's no question. I mean, Pat in particular, my God, there was a lot of work, AI work done on that photograph. But anyway, this publication is available to anybody, right? Is that am I giving away the farm here, or is that true?
Yeah, that's true. They can go to, I mean, where we have it is bloomgolfpartners.com/research. I've said that a few times, but they
Say it
can,
again.
yeah, they can go to bloomgolfpartners.com. There is a research tab there. Click on that.
Yeah.
They can put their information in and they'll get a copy, free copy.
I sat on my couch last night watching Top Gun Maverick and read your publications.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a great evening.
Tom
Both of
Cruise,
them.
Tom Cruise and Tyler Bloom in the same set.
Exactly. You're together. It was really quite entertaining. But let me go through some of this because I found some of this fascinating. Career commitment. You're saying that 60% of them are fully committed and 40%, almost half, are uncommitted or undecided as to whether or not they really want to be in the golf industry. Explain that and elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. So when we asked the question, basically, do you see this as a long-term career or are you considering other opportunities? Personally, I took this as a positive. I mean,
I
some
did
people
too, actually. I thought it was impressive.
some people might say 40% still are not sure, and you're thinking that's that's not a pot or a negative. But I think that in general, people see this as a long-term career. They're passionate about what they do. They love the industry.
Yeah.
They love the direction that the industry is going, whether it's through the education programs, whether it's through technology, whether it's through companies like yours that are doing a great job of engaging with them and giving them information. I think that there's just a professionalism around the industry that's really strong right now. So I think people see the upward mobility. You look at even just how much money's going into golf
Yeah, it's
right now.
amazing. It's
It's
just yeah, it's
so
big.
I think people see this probably more of a career and are positive about that, which is good. And there was certainly a percentage of people that say, I'm not sure this is my long-term job, but you're going to have that in any industry,
Yeah, of course.
that they just don't know if this is really the right fit for their skills or motivations and stuff. But for me personally, I took it as a real positive, and I think for any club or superintendent, that information to me says, here's why I need to pour into mentorship.
Yeah,
Here's why I need to spend time having one-to-one conversations, team building activities, get people to our local chapter meetings, Earthworks, Soil Academy. That's why
absolutely. Most
do
important.
those, because that's what's going to keep them engaged.
Yeah, and
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 we
help move their career forward.
100%.
So a big section of your publication really dealt with what you're calling soft skills, and I
Yeah.
really want to dive into this because this is fascinating to me, and as you described it in the publication, soft skills matter most. That was the number one section between education, career commitment, soft skills, and then ultimately barriers to retention. You really focused a lot of attention on soft skills, and this is the leadership. This is the communication, the business acumen, all of these things. And what really kind of pissed me off was it's four times more important than the agronomy of it all. But one of the things that I've always been struggling with, and I think the industry has struggled with, is the soft skills have been the area where we haven't, as an industry, been very good at. I mean, as an industry, we bring men and women into this job, and we hand them a weed whacker and say go to it, and that's their skill set. And now it's definitely changing, and I think you've certainly brought a lot of the attention to this. It's definitely changing. The whole communication leadership thing is changing. But where are young people getting training? I mean, they're really they don't talk about it in universities much. I mean, they don't at the 2-year programs. You might have one class on leadership. I remember when I was in corporate America, we would have a lot of that. And when I got into, really got into the turf industry, I was a big part of what's called ITOTA, which you're familiar with, Independent Turf and Ornamental Distributors Association, that a lot of us distributors would get together and we would do sales trainings. We'd have Sandler training, we'd have business training, we'd have leadership trainings. But, for the average assistant or even the superintendent, where are they finding that level of training for leadership skills, communication skills, business skills?
So it's really fascinating you bring this up, and we might go a little sideways here, but
That's okay.
but
That's fine.
from my perspective, they're only getting it from the person that they're working for, unless they're self-educated, reading books, watching YouTube,
Yeah.
getting training, whether it's through a Dale Carnegie, a Toastmasters, Sandler training, and most people probably wouldn't even know to go to those things, right?
Right.
So I think to your point, we've done a real disservice for people, especially as they get. Listen, at the end of the day, the technical skills are vastly important, and
Of course.
I think we have to be careful to not prioritize that, because what I found in this study is that people feel like the agronomics are just expected, but a lot of them don't know the agronomics. I mean,
No, they don't.
I'm
Yeah. Well, I can confirm that, I think.
yeah. So I think that we got to be careful not to like undermine the agronomic skill sets and being caught in the weeds. I mean, I hear hiring committees say we want a superintendent who geeks out about the agronomy.
Yeah.
They're comfortable that they can coach and develop somebody with their communication and leadership to a degree, but what they don't know is the agronomics. So you got to be great in that. With that being said, let's say that's foundational. I think that more people need to be looking outside of the industry for leadership coaching and communication coaching.
I would
I
agree with that.
I think a big thing for me, since I stepped out of that superintendent role, was the skills that got me here aren't getting me there. If I'm going to be playing in the lion's den with some of these other very successful search firms, business consulting firms, that I'm going to have to level up. And so I sought out business coaching. I
Good.
sought out communication coaching
Yeah.
because I knew it was going to be important for me if I'm going to be in the room full of CEOs, board members, to be able to communicate and articulate very effectively. And I think that's an area that has not been prioritized. And this is not taking a shot at our national association or anybody else. Just sometimes it's a function of time.
Yeah.
People just
No,
don't
I
have the
agree.
time, and there's only so much priority. So if I'm an assistant or I'm a young superintendent and I'm struggling in that area, you're going to have to find ways outside of the industry and research it, because no one else is going to do it for you but you.
Right, right. I mean, when you look at, the GIS show, the National Trade Show, some of the biggest, seminars are the leadership kind of seminars, which is interesting. But, you brought up an interesting point. You went through this because you knew your business, you needed these skills for your business because you're going to be dealing with CEOs and stuff. But so are superintendents and so are assistants when they sit in front of that Greens Committee chairman or that Greens Committee board. These guys are doctors and lawyers and businessmen and often highly educated, and to be able to communicate effectively is incredibly important for the success of any property, any golf course. So these are skills that we need badly, and I'm just not confident that we're really seeing the support for that generation. But from what your program read about, what I read about in your book was that these guys really are looking for this. They're looking for these kind of skills, and it sounded, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like, and you've said this, it sounded like a lot of it is coming from that one person on staff, that one, this superintendent or the director of golf or the director of agronomy. And is that enough? I mean, where can these, guys go and girls go and, go to get, this kind of leadership training?
Well, I'm going to put a plug in for us is
Please
that
do. That's why we're here.
yeah. So I mean, I took that research to heart, and so we are in the process and have started to pilot a leadership development program that's really delivered online and virtually, as well as in person, but really to kind of focus on communication skills, networking, how to build your resume, your cover letter, how to communicate in front of board members, how to interview properly, right? And again, it's a small piece. It's going to take time to build that curriculum up,
Oh, I
but
think that's critical. I think that's a wonderful place for you and your business to be in.
yeah,
And I think the future of that is exponential. I
yeah.
really do.
Well, and I think for us is like what I'm finding is superintendents would love to do it. They just don't have the time,
Of
right?
course not. And
So,
and probably don't know how to do it. You could. You could bring in the people that, set up a training, a leadership program.
well, so then I would tell you that the online program is one faction of it. The second piece is having a leadership summit where we have legit keynote speakers. I
Yeah.
won't names who we're looking at right now, but really successful people that have been effective in these disciplines, whether it's communications, time management, delegation. And again, that's a small piece. That's a one time a year thing, but maybe that gives people access to different thinking
Yeah,
and
exactly.
maybe to push them to search for more, because I think that's part of the issue is they just don't know where to go, how to go, and what's the first step. So if we can sort of facilitate that process on behalf of superintendents, even across the club, i
Yeah.
think that I think that's a win.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it's funny because you think about the training that we do give to the folks in the industry. It's often coming from distributor partners that are talking about products, or Earthworks talking about their passion for soils, or something along that line. But leadership. I'm going to give a big shout out to some of my favorite people up in New England, the Tom Irwin Company.
I
They've
think
yearly they've yearly had a program called the Leadership, and it's unbelievably powerful. I mean, and they bring a huge crew of their clients in, and year after year they go through different subject matters, and they put a lot of time and energy to it. And I think you're going to start to see, and I am seeing more distributor folks out there. Instead of just bringing Joel Simmons in to talk about soils 101, this is a subject matter that I mean, I can't, and again, your publication really said it. I mean, the longest line in your graph was the soft skills, leadership, communication. It sounds like the millennials and the Gen Zs understand that, and they want that, and that's important. And hopefully, companies like yours get out there and start doing these things. We can change the industry pretty radically. I mean, I feel pretty strongly that I was able to change an industry from a carbon-based thing. I think you're in the same position where you could bring this level of communications to, skill sets to the next generation, and man, it'll explode and make everybody better and stronger. And again, you've said this a couple times. The whole life work balance thing is really a part of that. The communication and leadership is everything when it comes to that, right?
Yeah, I think that people want to be a part of an organization that's going to invest in them and is
Yeah.
going to be involved in their growth and development. And this is a key piece to it. The agronomy piece is one area, but this is a really important piece. And if you read that study all the way through, one of the things that I found inspiring was that when assistants look at making that jump to superintendent, their number one priority is creating a great workplace culture.
I
It's
read that over. I said that earlier. I mean, that was probably the most impressive thing in the publication to me.
100%, right? So like that's important to them. And so if I'm a superintendent or a club, if they're valuing that, maybe I'd be attributing certain time and resources into making sure they have a model for what a great workplace culture is.
Yeah.
Clearly, you're not going to be able to do every single thing, but if you can try to integrate one or two key leadership sessions a year, that's a good start. Having those conversations with your assistants, whether it's morning meetings, end of the day wrap up sessions, those are things for them to see. Like, here's a model for what I want to do. And mentoring young people is important to them too, which I found again really sort of
That was great.
inspiring because you and I've talked about this. Like the gap to solve this assistant problem is really going to come, I think, from today's assistants. They're the ones that are really in the weeds with the staff and with interns and things of that nature. So they've got to inspire those people to want to pursue this as a career. Unfortunately, my generation, or like my 2 3 years, let's call it 2009 to 2012, 13, I think we did a real disservice to promote the industry. And I think probably push people to not enter it and not move up. Um,
Yeah.
because of what we were dealing with, what many of us were dealing with in terms of the time commitment to the job.
Yeah.
And I think that we've done a better job of trying to talk about the positives of the industry versus
Right.
just the negatives.
And that's clearly changed. I mean, 10, 20 years ago, the 120-hour work weeks were average. Now, I mean, and that was all the way through your publication. Not they don't want free meals, they don't want free golf, they want time with their family. They want time, they want to have this work-life balance. And I have this conversation even with folks on my team that, and it's important. I mean, 3 kids, moving around a lot of places, or a wife that wants you home, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm dealing with that now, with myself, and but it's interesting seeing how definitive it was throughout this publication. I think everybody knows this, and it's definitely changed. I don't think you see many of the 120-hour work weeks anymore, do you?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's a time and a place, right?
Well, you're in a construction job or something, or you got a tournament coming up. There's always exceptions, right? But day to
Yeah.
day,
Well, and I think superintendents have gotten better too. And what I've noticed, working with superintendents pretty much, week to week, they're doing a better job of clearly outlining what the expectations are
yeah,
versus just saying, hey, this is what it is. This is what you signed up for.
yeah,
They're being much more deliberate. We try to coach superintendents to be in your job postings, be clear and direct of what in season work hours should look like and hire to that. Don't be afraid of it because I find many people are afraid to speak on that because they hear these conversations about work life balance and they're afraid to talk about here's what the expectations are. You're better to just be direct about that with people because I think where my observation is people get frustrated is they sign up for something that they didn't know they were signing up for.
yeah,
And if you're promising them every other weekend off and they go consecutive months with one weekend off,
yeah.
probably going to be pissed. I mean,
And they should be pissed, quite honestly.
well,
It's funny. I had a conversation yesterday with a dear friend, superintendent, and he's dealing with some people on staff. One of which, young guy, millennial, just got a new girlfriend, and now all of a sudden his focus is all about the new girlfriend, and he's having to kind of like say, hey, this is great, but you can't always leave at 3 o'clock. And by the way, starting in the fall, we're going to be under construction, so I'm going to need you here till 6. And it's a conversation, and it's out on the table, and hopefully everybody understands it. We're running out of time, but I want to go through the last section of your group of your book. Well, I call it a book, but your publication, Barriers to Retention, and it was pretty definitive in there. Low pay, the hours. I love this one. Bad bosses. I hear that often. And one that I really found interesting was anxiety, which is more prevalent, or at least more paid. More attention is being paid to. I think my generation, anxiety was probably rampant, but we just didn't talk about it. And now it's talked about, and it's clearly shows up in your publication. What were you seeing? What were you hearing when you were interviewing people and they were talking about anxiety? And was it millennials? Was it the Z's? Was it specific to a generation? I mean, is it across the board? I found that interesting.
I think it's across the board in
Really?
different areas of their life, right?
Yeah.
So let's say it's somebody that's like me, they're dealing with home life aspects. They have kids, wife, and they're trying to deal with the and pressures that they're dealing with, and as well on the job and where to find the balance to that. And I think what I heard a lot in conversations around anxiety is they just don't know like where do I go, who can
Yeah.
help, and is it okay? Is it okay
Am I
to seek
okay?
out
Yeah.
help? And they may not.
Yeah.
They may not even know that they're dealing with anxiety because it's not something they've ever had to deal with, and maybe society has trained us previously not to be open about that, right? It's a
Right.
very vulnerable space to be in and talk about that stuff. And I find that mental health support in general, you're going to see more and more clubs adopting those sort of policies and or benefits to help support employees really of all generations. So I think it's a real positive thing, because a lot of us probably didn't know how to deal with our problems. Like I joked about earlier, like sometimes I'm on the phone and I'm as much of a therapist,
Right.
an untrained therapist as I am anything else.
But we're also a lot of the problem. I mean, I'm certainly, my generation is. I mean, we just kept bowling through stuff. But, one of the things that I think is real important, and I hear this from some of the better leaders that I work with, is that they try to not only, talk about the culture, but they also talk about a safe environment. They really work hard, and you've broached this, but the term safe, I think, is important because they're creating the culture where the employee feels safe. So they don't feel like, if something happens, somebody's going to, jump off the handle and I'm going to be fired that afternoon. I mean, that anxiety is definitive. And when you help create an environment where the employees feel like they're safe. This isn't going to blow up in their face, and tomorrow, they're going to be out of a job, and that level of cloud over their head isn't there. I've seen huge changes in culture when that is really the pressing factor, and I hope that's a trend as well.
It's funny you say that. One of my team members that came on with us in April, her name is Rachel Ridgway. She was director of human resources at Marion and Rehoboth Beach. And she talks a lot to me about psychological safety and creating that and promoting that within workplaces.
Good.
Because she said, a lot of problems can be solved if people just feel like they can come and have a genuine conversation,
Yeah.
and not be judged, and or there's not like a ulterior motive to what's going to happen. They want to feel like they can come in and have a genuine conversation, and that conversation is constructive, support.
Right.
They may not ultimately, want to hear the response, or somebody gives them the constructive feedback they need, but they need to feel comfortable they can have that convo. And I can speak on that even, more recently, even with our team. I've tried to do a better job of having one-to-one conversations and just say, how you doing?
Yeah.
We get wrapped up into the day to
You
day.
forget about that, right?
Yeah.
When you're busy, you forget about it.
We're dealing with humans,
Yeah, exactly.
People have got flaws, and there's seasons of life and people change.
Yeah.
So I think just staying connected with your team is really important. And I would encourage, superintendents to do that to teach their assistants to do that. So they're, it's delegating that down.
Well, it's funny you said that because, in the structure of the golf course maintenance team, it's the assistant that really is dealing with the core of the team. And that's where the culture really comes in. So without the assistant understanding the direction of the culture, and again, feeling safe, they're never going to be able to pass that down. Let me go through some of this because I'm going to run out of time here, and I know you're busy, and I've got places to be and friends to meet. Low pay, is that still a concern? Low pay, it seems to be changing pretty quickly. I mean, I can't tell you how many older superintendents, oh man, we're paying these assistants like ridiculous money. But I think it's wonderful that, assistants, I remember, 90s and 2000s, they were making $20,000. I mean, it was poverty and working 120 hours. It's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. I find low pay is still an issue
Wow.
periodically.
Good.
But what I would say is there's more information out to support clubs to make changes versus, oh, I can't believe we have to jump somebody up 10 to 15% in salary. Listen, the data for us shows that the data is somebody will stay in a job if they were just to get a 10% increase on what they're currently making.
Yeah.
So,
and the cost of bringing on a new employee is exorbitant compared to a 10% bonus or 10 salary increase, I should say.
Yeah, 100%. It's still an issue, but I think with the industry as a whole has really leveled up, especially at those entry level assistant marks, and maybe 3 to 4 years in as an assistant, you've now got a livable earning wage that's competitive to other industries.
Yeah, yeah. How about hours? Hours are changing. Are they? Are we managing hours better as a whole?
I think what I'm seeing more is that the scheduling is changing where it's not just every other weekend. People are saying, hey, you're going to work 5 days, maybe sun up to sundown, but you're going to have a day off on the weekend, or they may be integrating, days off during the week to just give people more consistent time off. It might not be as structured as an every other weekend schedule or things of that, but at least they're doing a better job of trying to create flexibility during the week and looking at the week as a holistic viewpoint versus just, the golf calendar.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I think I'm seeing as I'm talking to superintendents across the country is, a lot of the assistants crew are, they're going home at 3 or 4 o'clock as opposed to, dark. They're getting better at the agronomy of it. They're doing better jobs, and I think you're seeing more and more. I mean, again, obviously in our business, construction, airification, tournaments, these things change that dynamic. But day-to-day operations, I see a lot of, you drive around as a salesman, if you're not there by 2 o'clock, a lot of these places are shut down. And I think that's a good trend. I mean, they're getting in early, but, people feel like there's a schedule that they can live to.
Yeah. I think as well, you look at some of the tech, you hit on it, the agronomy has gotten better.
It has.
The board, right? And whether that's products like yours, People are
It
doing
is. It's all
it.
us.
Right, it is 100%, right? But people are becoming better at utilizing the tools that they have more
Right.
effectively. So the guesswork that used to be there at 3 o'clock to say, "Hey, we need to be here an extra hour or
Yeah,
two." Well, now I know because I've got moisture meter readings, I've got soil data,
exactly.
and I have more predictable means to know what's going to happen on the surface. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah. So what's your biggest takeaway as we end this conversation? I mean, is that you? You're very busy. That's good. I was afraid of that. What's your biggest takeaway? What's the biggest, I mean, of all this work you and Pat put together, and again, I'm going to say it's well worth getting, and anybody should get a copy of it. Any superintendent should get a copy of it. Any assistant should get a copy of it. I mean, they really should study what this is talking about. And, certainly for anybody in a leadership role, man, this lays out a nice roadmap for, how to get through all of this. What was your biggest single maybe really what I'm asking is what surprised you the most of all of the stuff that you did in this?
Oh man, there's a lot, but I'll try to
I bet.
I'll
Sorry.
summarize it on two key points, and I'll keep it concise. The first is just how there is a lack of awareness around this career path
Yeah.
and how to access resources to move and advance up in the career path, whether you're an entry level person all the way up to an assistant, that there's a genuine lack of awareness around the career path and how to get to the next step. That was a pretty big surprise to me. The other one really centers around the workplace culture and how important that is, whether you're currently in the industry or you're somebody that's out of the industry and what they're looking for in employment.
Yeah.
And I think that employers that really kind of spend time and focus on that are going to reap big rewards on it. And if you don't, then you're going to be in a constant hamster wheel of replacing people at every
Yeah.
level because workplace culture is really important to employees.
And now we're right back to that conversation about anxiety.
Yeah.
When those things are broken, the level of anxiety can only, it only get crazier. I mean, it's like, I mean, a silly little analogy when the garage is really messy, it just feels horrible. You just feel like there's a weight on your shoulder. You spend a couple hours cleaning the garage, you feel like, wow, this is great. I feel like a weight lifted off. Anyway,
I think one last little point on
do
that
it.
is I feel that superintendents and leaders need to drive what that is for them. Like
Yeah,
they need to be real
good.
clear on what that is. So then they start hiring to those values,
Right.
to the culture they want to create versus just passively hoping that it works out. Like you've got to be intentional about it in everything that you do, or you're just going to get
Yeah.
you're just gonna
Yeah.
get what you get.
It's funny you say that. I'm working with some folks that are bringing in new teams into their organization, and one of the things that really struck me was, when you have a team and you can control and manage the culture, it's great. But when you bring in somebody else's culture, and you don't have that control, you lose control of the culture. But like you said, you want to hire to your expectations of culture, and that maintains the environment. I mean, that's probably the best advice you can possibly give, and that's a great way for us to end this because we could probably go on for I could go on for another hour. I bet you could too, but luckily we've got things to do. But again, I'm going to say this over and over again. I love the publication that you and Pat put together. I think it's great, and everybody should get it. And I love watching your business grow. I hope you start to continue to grow it into leadership training and communication training. I just think that's a huge void in our business, and I think you're the right team to do that. So I see a big, long, happy, healthy future for you, my friend. Long past the time I'm sitting wherever I'm going to be sitting in my rocking chair. I think you're going to be quite successful with this, and I hope you're happy with all that you have accomplished in the short just a few years. How old is your business? I don't even know.
5 years, man, and
That's
just
unbelievable.
and
Unbelievable.
I appreciate all your support. Again, I think as people get to know who Tyler Bloom is, I'm like everybody else. I'm your average guy that just really is passionate about what he
Well, I
does.
don't know if you're so average, but yeah,
But
and that's a compliment.
I appreciate all the support and yeah, look forward to connecting soon.
We'll do it. Thank you so much. And folks, if you haven't subscribed to the Earthworks podcast, we'll tell you who's coming up next. That's kind of what we're trying to do. But thank you, Tyler. Best of luck. Keep up the good work. And like I said, if you guys haven't gotten on his website and found this publication, everybody should have it in their shop. So there you have it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, buddy.